is your brother G World 7_D. I'm going back to my book, Ancient North Americans. Alright, I'm going to turn to page 373. Turn to 373. I'm going to do a little reading in this book. You know, like I said so many times that I've talked about this, we've been totally lied to about our history. Okay, right here. The Southeast. The setting. I don't know if I can get this clear up here. Okay. The Southeast largely corresponds physiographically to the coastal plain and the southern half of the Appalachians. But from the archaeological viewpoint, the dominant features of the last 6,000 to 8,000 years have been the valleys of the major rivers, such as the Tennessee and Mississippi. Remember, they traveled, they sailed us out, they were able to move about. These valleys were the setting for the development of the most complex social and political organizations. North of Mexico. I kind of got lost for a second. The climate of the Southeast is temperate, with long, frost-free seasons that ensure rich vegetation and, as a result, rich animal resources. Rainfall is plentiful, and the soils are relatively drought-resistant. Much of the Southeast was originally forested, and even the uplands had plentiful resources. At the time of the European invasion, the wild foods were still very important in the diet of the Aboriginal Southeastern Indians. I don't use the term native. Aboriginal Southeastern Indians, even though cultivated plants had become increasingly important as the economic basis for complex chiefdoms. In later times, limitations of both the fertility of the soils and technology led to the increasing concentration in the river valleys. You know, notice it's emphasizing rivers. I said that they built great cities near large bodies of water or small rivers. That's how they were able to travel about and then travel and carry their tools. Yes, they got off and went on foot to different locations, but they used the waterways, the rivers, and the different river channels to connect and travel inland to different places. All right, I'm going to go on and read this. The people. The indigenous peoples of the Southeast were, without exception, American Indians, Aboriginal Negroes. These and no other were responsible for the massive earthworks and mounds of the Southeast. Remember earlier when I was on the track where I was talking about all those mounds on LSU campuses? You found a bunch of mounds in the Southeast, but you found a bunch of mounds in the Northeast. Mounds all over the damn country. All right? And they built different sizes and they have different shapes, these mounds or these earthenworks. All right? While human occupancy of the area is not unambiguously established before 10,000 BC. That's not accurate, but it is possible and even likely that humans occupied the area before that time. So it says one thing and then it goes another. While human occupancy of the area is not ambiguously established before 10,000 BC, it is possible and even likely that humans occupied the area before that time. Okay, no other group besides so-called Negroes existed at this time. This is how you can catch their little lie, claiming that other people here before us. Physically, the later populations of the Southeast were similar to other people east of the Rocky Mountains, although they may have had slightly larger heads and broader skulls than some neighboring people. And then he goes and talks about attempts to racial classify them. But I'm not going to go there. But you see that when you start looking at dates, and the further back you go, the further black area gets. Or melanated Aboriginal it is. We were the original people on this planet, period. And see, a lot of times you can debunk all these little lies because these other groups did not come about. These other groups are basically different, various degrees of miscegenation amongst a very deep black-white mixture. That's how these other groups come about. So they was mixed before they came over to the Americas, these other groups. All right. Going further down, I want to read this, and then I'll be finished with this, because I may do another one later on. All right, we'll go further in this book. The sedentary period. Okay, hold on, let me get it clear. The sedentary period. Come in clear. Bang, there we go. The definition of archaeological periods is always arbitrary, but the distinction between the societies of the later archaic period and the early sedentary period is an exceptionally good example of the problems of constructing such units. While there are important and major differences between, say, 2000 BC and 200 BC, it is not clear just where the line between these two times should be drawn. Fortunately, the problem is merely terminological. Get my tongue twisted. So 700 BC can be used arbitrarily. By 700 BC, moreover, societies in the southeast and along the southern border of the northeast had already changed in some significant and some not so significant ways. Perhaps the most widespread of the changes from the archaic period was a wide acceptance of ceramic technology over most of the eastern North America. This new technology had, of course, been developed in the southeastern archaic some 1,000 years before, but it was only with the coming of the sedentary period that it came to be accepted over the entire area. I'm gonna make sure I'm showing you what I'm reading. Okay, over the entire. It is not likely that this acceptance indicated any great changes in the lifeway of the southeast, but it may be that the spread of the pottery making was a reflection of greater permanence of settlement. In the southeast, some, but not all, of the pottery by this time had cord-roughened exteriors. It was of sort called woodland in the northeast. Even though pottery probably made little difference in life ways, pottery making is important because it provides archaeologists with a diverse, sensitive, and virtually indestructible set of artifacts. At the beginning of the sedentary period, virtually all the archaeological phases in the southern southeast are based more on ceramic similarities and differences than on any other one thing. Now we're going to go to mound building. I'm reading it straight, so if it comes like I'm reading and you can't really see it clear, I apologize for that, because when I read it off the phone, I just start reading and chopping up. Mound building. Another of the major innovations of the early sedentary mound construction is far more impressive to the non-specialist than pottery. The construction of earthen mounds in the lower Mississippi Valley may actually have started in the later archaic times, but both in the lower valley and on the northern border of the southeast, in Ohio Valley, quite large mounds were being constructed by the start of the sedentary period. The two outstanding examples of these developments are the Poverty Point culture of Louisiana and the Adena culture of the Ohio Valley. The dating of Poverty Point complex is still somewhat unsettled, but it probably started after 1300 BC and persisted well into the sedentary period. To the north, many Adena sites are outside the southeast, but the Adena complex as a whole is much a part of southeastern prehistory as it is of northeastern. In the remainder of the southeast, mound building did not appear quite so early as it did on the periphery, but mounds were common by 300 BC. In the northern areas, early mound building was often linked to the burial of what had been interpreted as a very high-ranked people. Even at the beginning, However, mound constructions such as those at Poverty Point were not primarily burial mounds, and by the end of the sedentary period in the southeast, some areas seem to have developed platforms and perhaps even substructures, mounds that foreshadow the developments of the late prehistoric. Some later sedentary mounds may have been more oriented towards literal and symbolic elevation of the living than towards the honorable disposal of the dead. The early mound building of the southeast was often truly monumental. At Moundsville, West Virginia, the Grave Creek Mound built by the Adena people is over 20 meters high. At Poverty Point, the diameter of the whole mound complex is some 1,200 meters. Mound building on this scale probably means greater sedetism, and it certainly implies greater organization. I'm going to stop right there in this book, Ancient North Americans. And there's one called Ancient South Americans. I mentioned before how you have probably millions of mounds of earth structures here in America. There's around 200,000 mounds left, and that's just an estimate. A lot have been destroyed. There were mounds in all these major cities. All right. This technology of building mounds wasn't just there to harbor the dead. There were platforms on it, like I just read. So very different spiritual ceremonial practices that was taking place on those mounds. The earthwork, like you see the serpent in Ohio, you see that in various different places where you find images of the serpent here in Americas. The serpent you also find on the head of the Egyptian pharaohs. There's a connection to here in Americas and then to Egypt. So it doesn't have, you don't even have to use the so-called names where people start renaming things. You're just applying names. You can look at certain monumental structures where the similarity is there. All right. You can look at the early Egyptian pyramids, the step pyramid. You have a bunch of smaller step pyramids here in America. Then you have larger pyramids constructed in America. But then remember I mentioned you, they're talking about ceramics and all that stuff. Remember I showed you the docking pier right off of Florida. The docking where the boats were able to dock there. Now that's buried underwater after the last ice age. Brothers and sisters were always able to travel. I read you in there that they use the riverbed to travel within. Remember my pictures I showed you before in my older videos, showing you these little black people with feathers, chocolate people, in small boats traveling about. But they use the small boats, like I said before, as an ancient highway. All right. This is something that I picked up on years ago. It took years of studying and researching to basically compile this stuff, but I was able to pick up on that. So that's why a lot of those brothers are able to use the Colorado River to get near the area of the Grand Canyon. They're able to use these different river channels, get off the river channels, and then travel using their machine tools, carving to rock. As well have the knowledge of smelting iron. So we got to understand that these brothers and sisters had a high level of technology, which so many Caucasian scholars cannot fathom, but also ignorant Negroes like Umar Johnson, who just believed that you were a West African slave, or these other little Negroes that you hear on YouTube who just talk about West Africa and say we came here, ignoring all the monumental structures that were built here in America, which I showed you before in the past when I showed you the ancient Aztec king, Montezuma, when I showed you that. So-called black people are Aboriginal on this planet. This should be basically ingrained in your heads now. But unfortunately, like I said, you're going to have other people deny it because in order to continue to steal your land and your identity, and for them to continue to collect checks off this government, claim to be something they're not, you're going to have to continue to be a foreigner, quote, an African American. And unfortunately, you get many foreign blacks who want to apply that on us, telling us who we are, when they don't know a damn thing about us. Everything that they're spitting out and reciting, they've gotten from white folks. And that's why I said not all skin folks are kin folks. They should not be speaking on your history. So you got idiots like over in the UK, this idiot Cyril Garvey want to tell black Americans who we are. The guy's a moron. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. But that's typical when you haven't done no real research and you just call yourself a Pan-African. All right? And this is why I'm giving you my sources. And then I'm putting a lot of these pieces together. Mound building was done by so-called black people globally. I showed you one of my books that shows you mounds in Asia. You have mounds in Europe. They were all over the planet. So this is when you hear these goofy white scholars sit and tell you that all this stuff was done separately and there was no connection. That is nonsense, man. They built a lot of these structures like lined up to the stars, man. It's like their measurements, they line up to the stars. And even in different continents, a lot of stuff that's built here, you can line it up to places in Europe or to Asia. The way they design this, man, they align this stuff, like I said, they charted the skies, the stars. They were ancient stargazers. Our ancestors. They knew they read the stars, they studied the stars, and they tried to plot that down on the physical earth that they were occupying. So all that stuff, when they were seen in the sky, they tried to build structures that resembled or mimic what they were viewing astrologically down to the natural earth surface. That is great science and great technology, and no simple, ignorant people couldn't have done that. We need to give ourselves credit and stop saying we're descendants of African slaves. That's insulting. It's beyond insulting. To me, people saying that are coons. Because it's so much information. But you have to study this information. You cannot listen to white folks. Please don't listen to them. Please don't listen to these Negroes who want to get biscuits and brownie points from white folks. That is not our history. Once you break stuff down and once you start studying our true history, you will be better off. I showed you a brother with like a football in his hand, man. Over here in the Americas, man. We have a rich ancient history. We need to retake all of our history and stop saying you descended of some Kuta Kinte. We've been here. This is our history. This is our culture. We need to take everything back. We need to take all the stuff back. So brothers and sisters, I don't want to just keep talking right here, but I may do another video tonight or just do it during the week. But I want you to continue to pull in your research and start using common sense. Do not listen to Umar Johnson, man. Man, that guy, he's giving so much false, fake information, calling you American African. He's being very disrespectful, and showing how ignorant he really is to our history. Showing how very ignorant he really is. See, I like I said, I know this information because I come from educators in my family. The information that's been taught about our history is a bunch of BS. Anyone who's continue with this African stuff that you come from Africa as slaves, I said this over and over, they're ignorant. They have not done the real studies. And when you start studying and looking at all these paintings and drawings of Aboriginal blacks here, like I said earlier in track, by large building structures what they done built with images with tall beans, and the beans had that quarter moon symbol, like that cow horn symbol on top, what you see the Vikings wore on their head with their helmet. Man, I'm telling you, this technology, this information is very old. And it's older than what these bastards are telling you. The Americas is not the new world. Don't buy Negroes telling you that, man. America is the old world, like Africa, like Europe, and like Asia, and like the Pacific Islands. America's not the new world. It's the new world to white folks when they start exploring during the age of exploration. America is the old world, just like these other places are the world. It's not the new world. And Negroes who tell you that are enemies and don't know what the hell they're talking about. America's not the new world. It's the new world to white folks. How could it be a new world when you already had ancient building structures here? And when white folks came here, they already seen Negroes here. How in the hell is a new world? So you got to throw away a lot of these terms and a lot of these names, or what has been taught to you traditionally in school. That information is wrong. Reclaim your true history. Get back your true history. Like I said earlier, you have mounds all on LSU campus, Louisiana State University. You have mounds all on that campus. That campus was built in ancient, sacred, Aboriginal, Black Indian land. This is our history that we really need to regain and reclaim. Stop saying you're a slave from Africa. Start getting books that deal with iron smelting, how the ancients knew how to carve into rock. That's my thing, dropping it to you. That's dealing with the sciences of iron smelting. Them smelting iron. Then using that heat, the furnaces, and then carving up that metal and steel. They use that, man, and they use that to cut into the damn rock. This is obvious. They had the technology. They had the knowledge. But so many of our people want just to say they're slaves from Africa. That has to stop. Don't listen to these so-called educated Negroes. They're the biggest fool. They're going to lead you down the sewage. Because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're just regurgitating what white folks taught them. What they learned from some Negro at a historically black university college.